raw head has a weakness and can be defeated.
Ooh.
Normally, it's like, very boogeyman deer. Just in case you didn't know, I'm Brian.
And I'm Matthew.
And this is Road Trip Recap.
Spoilers up ahead, as today we talk about the Faith episode of Supernatural.
And we're also going to take a look at the creature that put Dean in the hospital, the Rawhead.
Yes. Buckle up and let's hit the road. First off, before we get started, I got a lot to unpack from here, so I may reference my notes a lot. So if you see me looking down, that's what I'm doing.
Cheater.
Because we have a lot of reoccurring actors in this episode.
There's a lot of extras that they have to use, though.
It's not even like the extras. If it was just like guy in crowd,
yeah,
then I'd be like, okay, that's one thing. But it's like people that have a certain degree of screen time. Like some of them are kind of like background characters, but it's not like person in fifth row of the service.
Tent.
There might be. Like maybe they just didn't get credited enough to where they showed up. But there's a lot that, I can point out exactly where they are, and you can be like, oh, okay, like, I know who you're talking about if I watch the episode.
Okay.
So our episode opens up with Sam and Dean. They're pulling up into an old house, and they go to the trunk, and they're kind of in a hurry. They pull out some tasers and everything. Oh, what'd you set it for? 100,000 volts? Oh, geez, I want this raw head extra crispy. Which, on first watching the episode, I thought, Dean's just always coming up with names for things, so I just thought that was just what he was calling it, but that's actually the creature that they don't go into any detail for, which is why I'm excited. We're going to learn about it a little bit later.
One of the few creatures that is kind of a one-and-done creature.
Yeah, like, you get nothing from it.
It shows up once and then it's gone.
Anyways, they go into the house, and, there's a little cabinet situation. They ready, and they open it, and there's two kids in there, and they're like, is it still here? And they're like, yeah, and the kids leave. Now, on the right, there's a boy and a girl. The boy was played by Kanan Weave, who we see come back later in season 4 twice. The first time we see him is in the Wish Coin episode.
Oh, yeah.
He's one of the bullies that is picking on the Todd. But you know him better when he comes back 5 episodes later as Barry Cook, Sam's friend who killed himself after Sam left the school because he was being bullied.
Huh.
He may have grown up to be the bully in that later episode, but I don't think he was also, trying to headcanon them being the same person. I could see him being a bully, being traumatized by this event, like later on, trying to fit in, whatever. But then maybe, I don't know, Trickster sent him back in time or something. Who knows? Anyways, Rawhead attacks, and so Dean's like, get the kids out of here. He's trying to fend it off with the taser. He misses with his. Sam throws him, the second one, and gets knocked out of his hand. Dean crawls through some water, grabs it. The Rawhead's in the water, so when he shoots the Rawhead, the electricity travels through the water, which I hear wouldn't really happen the way that it did in the episode, but it's TV, and so it shocks him, and it jacks his heart to where he's dying. 2 points here. We cut to after Sam finds him and everything, we go to the hospital, and Sam's trying to maneuver around, seeing what's happening with his brother and not getting in trouble with the police, making up stories and whatnot. And
coming up with lies on the fly.
Yeah. He talks to a nurse there, and she's like, oh, we don't have any insurance for you on file. And he's like, oh, sorry, here you go. And she's like, oh, thank you, Mr. Berkowitz. Apparently, he was using an alias of David Berkowitz, which was also known as the son of Sam or the 44 caliber killer.
Oh, God.
So Dean has his rock aliases. Apparently, Sam has his serial killer aliases. Also, that nurse was played by Erica Carroll. And, again, headcanon. A few episodes later, they come back to wherever this nurse has moved to, where she actually has 2 sons, and she's running a motel, and there's a creature that is hunting children specifically and puts them in the hospital. And then Sam and Dean actually dealt with this when they were kids.
Oh yeah,
she's the mom, and then finds religion and comes back in much later seasons as the angel Hannah.
Huh. So basically, she's just been like moving up in the celestial world, kind of.
Yeah, I guess
The
it's
supernatural world from like one-off nurse to like victim of I think that was the Sasha. No, that's the clown episode. Never mind.
Oh yeah.
But basically moving up in the supernatural world from victim to angel, or at least angel vessel.
Yeah.
Yeah, a striga. It's a striga. That's what it is.
So, anyways, Sam's trying anything he can to find help. He calls Dad, leaves a message. No luck there. Dean shows up. He's like, I checked myself out. I'm not gonna die in a hospital where the nurses aren't even hot. And Sam reveals like a friend of their dad's, Joshua, mentioned this specialist over in the middle of Nebraska, and so like he wants to go and check it out. And so they go over to Nebraska, which I heard for like the scenes in like the tented area and everything, they had to tow a lot of those cars because they were getting stuck in the mud because it like wouldn't stop raining. But anyways, they pull in. Dean's not happy because it's a faith healer, and he's just like, "You didn't tell me this. You said we were going to a doctor." He's like, "I'm pretty sure I said specialist." And so you can see like there's one guy that's talking about how it's a sham and everything. The sheriff's taking him away, and it's like, "Hey man, this is a place of worship." As Dean's not real fond about it, he runs into Layla, and Layla, she's hoping to be healed. We find out later she has a brain tumor. It's inoperable. And in the process of talking, her mother shows up, Mrs. Rourke. And she's just not a huge fan of Dean from the get-go. Mrs. Rourke was played by Jillian Barber. And so, spoilers for the episode I'm spoiling anyways, Layla doesn't get healed, so she has potentially 6 months to live. And so after that 6 months, her daughter dies. Mrs. Rourke, I'm again headcanon. She decides to study medicine so that way, others don't fall to the same fate or whatever. Ends up moving to the UK, marries Mr. Hess and becomes Dr. Hess, who is part of the British Men of Letters, who comes back in like season 12.
And
Spoilers.
that is a ribbon of headcanon right there.
But it's possible.
I mean, yes.
I made it work.
Yeah.
Deal with it. This one, less likely. They go into the tent, and then we meet Roy LaGrange. He's the Reverend. He's healing people. Roy, he was played by Kevin McNulty, and he comes back in season 10 as the butler Philip. Have you gotten through season 10?
Oh, yeah.
That's the one where Bobby was set to inherit stuff from the lady that died.
Yeah.
The butler doesn't like Sam and Dean. That's Roy.
The other shifter episode.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
One of many.
Roy lost some weight, became a butler, and got his eyesight back, and yeah.
Somehow just gets his eyesight back.
I mean, maybe he still had some latent healing. The Reaper was just like, here, have some eyes back. I killed your wife.
That are just like some, good surgical procedures that finally like advance far enough that they're able to be like, oh, I know you're like legally blind, but we can get your sight back for you.
They go in, they start the service. Dean's not a believer. He gets called out. Blind guys have sharp ears, so be careful what you say. Calls Dean up, and then he goes to heal him. As he heals him, Dean goes down and he sees the Reaper. He doesn't know it's a Reaper at that point, but he sees the Reaper. The Reaper was played by Alex Daikun, who comes back in season 8 as Mr. Villy, which is the old man that we see going into the safety deposit box to pull out some body parts to go at the auction.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe Sam kills him with Thor's hammer.
Yep, Mjolnir.
Yep. That we're still, there's a lot more people that reoccur in here. So, I mean, I don't think the Reaper came back as a person, so that one doesn't that doesn't work out for me. There. Dean doesn't like it. He feels wrong about the whole thing, and so they go to look into it because they also find out that there was a guy around Dean's age that died of a heart attack right around the same time that Dean was healed. So Sam goes to find out about the guy that died of the heart attack. Dean goes to interview the Reverend just to kind of get some more information. finds out that the Reverend he had cancer. It was inoperable, and then went into a coma, and then just woke up. His eyes were gone, but he could heal people, is what he found out. And so they're starting to suspect that something's going on here. Meanwhile, Sam is over at a pool talking to Jason about what happened when Marshall Hall was the guy that died.
Mm-hmm.
When Marshall died, and Jason was played by Colin Lawrence, who we see come back in season 5 as Reggie. He's one of 3 hunters that Sam calls in because he's trying to not be a hunter. And I believe he's one of the ones that doesn't make it back, and then Sam, I think, has to kill the others. I don't remember exactly how that episode goes. But then he also comes back in season 12 as a vet. Sam gets shot by one of the British men of letters, and she makes the vet heal him up. And he's like, that's not legal. She's like, I don't care. Here's a bunch of money.
Actually, I think I've gotten to that episode.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
That vet was Jason here, the guy at the pool.
Okay.
It pointed out that the clock had stopped at the pool, and it was stopped at the same time that Marshall had died. And so they got some things to go off of now. It's at this point when Dean's leaving after talking to the Reverend. Miss Rourke isn't happy because Dean got healed, and they've been to every service. And this is when we learn that Layla has the brain tumor. So Dean goes back to the hotel, tries to figure out what Sam has found out, and Sam's just like, dude, I'm sorry. I didn't know, this guy died of the same thing, and it's probably, as they do their research, it's probably a Reaper, and Dean's not happy. He has a lot of survivor's guilt throughout a lot of these episodes, especially when him living causes somebody else to die.
In this case, it's almost basically his mortality was swapped with someone else's mortality.
Sure. So they just find out, every time someone was healed, someone has died. So it's not just Dean. They're trying to figure out what it is. They figure out that potentially a Reaper. During this time where they're searching, on the original and DVD versions, we get Blue Oyster Cult's Don't Fear the Reaper playing, as we get Roy healing an old man, and this lady jogging gets caught. Apparently Netflix does not have that song playing. I don't know if they have one playing. I didn't look at that version specifically, but
I don't. It's some sort of kind of rock, Blue Oyster Cult. When my wife and I were rewatching that episode, I was kind of taken aback because I'm like, hey, I love that song.
But the old man was played by John Hainsworth, and after he gets healed, he goes back in time and becomes P.T. Sandover, the workaholic whose ghost kills people during economic downtimes if they're underperforming.
Oh, yeah, that's another good episode.
That is a good episode. So now that they know that Roy is using Reapers to do all this, they argue about killing him. Dean's like, he's basically a monster. He's killing people. We got to kill him. And Sam's like, no, he's still a person. So they're working stuff out there. They go to investigate. So Dean's gonna go see what's going on with the service, and Sam's gonna go break into their house and check out what's going on. Sam finds an old spell book that has news articles in it, and it's at this point when he finds that with the news articles, I was like, maybe this is where Marshall Hall was, because Marshall Hall was played by Woody Jeffries, who we see come back in season 12 as Tommy. Tommy is a friend of Vince Vincenti, which is a rock star that gets possessed by Lucifer.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't really see him a whole lot in this episode because there's actually a deleted scene where Marshall Hall is killed as Dean's being healed. And I guess they chose to keep that out. To
make it more of a surprise.
Yeah. So I don't know if one of the newspaper clips has a picture of him or if it's some of the other victims. I didn't look closely enough. We get to where Layla's about to be healed. She gets called up, and so Dean's very torn. And he tries to talk her out of it. Roy isn't what he seems. Don't do this. But, this is something that they've been waiting for. And, really excited about it, and so she's going to go and do it.
There's some budding romantic tension.
Right. And so even though, like, he really doesn't want to because, like, he wants her to be healed, he yells fire, gets everybody out of there. It's like there was that protester from earlier.
Yep.
The Reaper's after the protester because, you know, it's people that are found to be immoral by, turns out, the wife, Sue Ann, I believe. And so as Dean yells fire, it stops everything. So the protester's okay for the moment, but then no, he's not.
No, he's not.
Because the Reaper comes back. That's when Dean sees Sue Ann. It has like the little cross and goes over to stop her, and so she tucks it in and starts yelling for help. And so, you know, some sheriffs show up and they throw Dean out. One of the officers is played by Sean Reese. He's credited as Tall Deputy. Sean Reese comes back in just a couple episodes as Lee Bender.
Man, he went on a down, like, headcanon-wise, he went downhill real quick.
Or did he? Hear me out now. The family lives in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Or do they? Maybe Pa lives in Minnesota. The boys still work. They go off. He lives in the middle of Nebraska and works, and then like every couple months or like maybe once a year or so, they take a week or two vacation, go up to visit Pa, kidnap and murder a couple people. Working in law enforcement, he knows how to get away with it.
How to hide all the cars and everything.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I see you.
So anyways, you know, they throw Dean out, and they're like, if you come back, you know, we're going to put the fear of God in you. Like, fear of God, got it. Yeah, whatever. Sue Ann, she doesn't press charges against Dean, but you can tell, like, something's going on. Like, she doesn't press charges because she's going to kill him. We get, like, Dean tries to talk to Layla about, like, you know, it's not what you think it is. She doesn't really understand. Things aren't working out there. It's whatever. We get a little bit more of Dean's survivor's guilt, you know, because if he hadn't been healed, like, she could have been healed instead. And, like, he doesn't like people dying and him surviving when there were chances for them to survive if he had not. So we get, you know, Sam and Dean, they're going to stop Sue Ann. They go in to figure out what's going on. Dean's like, I'm going to, you know, you go ahead, I got this. So he goes to distract the cops, like, hey, you guys going to put that fear of God into me? Takes off running. Which I'm sure Tall Deputy's favorite part right now, because he gets to hunt some guy.
Yeah, he's hunting him down. That was a very Han Solo moment of him. It was just like...
Which, if you watch back in that episode, when the dog starts freaking out and they're looking, and like the one officer's like, stupid dog. The other one's kind of like, hey, that's Lee. Like, he's totally into this.
He's having fun.
Anyways, Sam goes into the basement, finds the black altar, and you know, topples it over, whatever. But turns out that's not good enough. Also, if you look closely, that basement for Sue Ann, there's probably the body of a rawhead in there, because that's the same set.
Yep. Just reused.
Anyways,
I gotta sweep this out. She's just pushing him off to the side.
So Sue Ann shows up, locks Sam into the basement, and then it was just like, your brother has to die. He's immoral, or, you know, whatever.
Yeah. Whatever self-righteous justification she's got.
They're gonna heal Layla, but it's gonna be Dean that dies this time. But whatever. The Reaper attacks Dean, and then this time Sam Batman's in.
Yay!
Nick of time. He takes the little amulet cross thing, whatever, smashes it. Reaper comes after Sue Ann instead. They're just like, what happened? As far as like Layla and the Reverend and everything. The Reaper's now pissed, comes after Sue Ann, kills her. We get to the end of the episode. You know, Dean's still kind of whatever. But Sam had called Layla and has her come over. She talks to Dean, and she talks to Dean about faith. You know, you can't just believe when things are going well. You have to believe all the time. I found it slightly humorous because just in my notes I wrote down that she talks to Dean about faith. And the actress who played Layla played Darla in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And Faith is one of the other Slayers. So that's neither here or there.
And I was actually introduced to that actress through Dexter. She was Rita in Dexter.
Interesting.
Yeah. Although she's in a lot more episodes than the one that she gets for Supernatural.
Is there any faith in Dexter?
No, there is not.
Oh,
not
well,
that I remember.
shoot.
Dexter might kill a Faith, but I don't remember. But
Anyways, what about this Rawhead? We'll get to Reapers later.
yeah. So because we're going to see Reapers later, and there's a lot of different mythology about Reapers, but we're going to have a lot of time to cover them. The Rawhead is something that we hear about it once, and then it's gone. I don't think it makes any other appearances at all in any other Supernatural episodes.
And we don't even really hear about it. We just hear the name.
Yeah, just the name Rawhead. And
I thought that was a derogatory term that Dean was using.
That's what I call zombies. But the Rawhead is actually a thing. It's it's kind of a boogeyman. It's another name for boogeyman. One of the first mentions of it was back in I believe one of the dictionaries in the 1500s talks about Rawhead and Bloody Bones. And Rawhead and Bloody Bones are essentially boogeymen of that time.
Okay.
They are thought to be friends that steal children and eat them or devour them.
Right.
Rawhead has a little bit of a relationship to Jenny Greenteeth or the Grindelwald, which all are water-based creatures. They basically are used to deter children from going too near bogs or rivers or lakes or ponds, saying that if you go too far by yourself, then the Rawhead's going to get you and take you to his lair and eat you.
Or a basement.
Or a basement. Well, after a little bit of time, the Rawhead started, as with a lot of mythological creatures, the Rawhead boogeyman story kind of evolved, and then they added the element of bloody bones, and it became something that actually would live in an old abandoned house under the stairs, and you could actually sneak in and stare under the stairs, and there you would see Rawhead sitting on his pile of dead children. But if you saw the Rawhead would look and see you, and you would be its next guaranteed victim.
Oh.
And so it was kind of that way of, scaring children into behaving, scaring children into doing what they're told. After a little bit of time, the Rawhead would then evolve once again as the Rawhead was brought over to the United States.
Okay.
And was very popular within the South, in which case Rawhead and Bloody Bones, Rawhead itself was presented as kind of like this anthropomorphic, disgusting creature that would get you. Whereas in American mythology, Rawhead and Bloody Bones became friends, but also the same. Bloody Bones was a skeleton that was completely that was able to move on its own, an animated skeleton covered in blood and rags and things like that.
As you will.
And then Rawhead was actually the head of that skeleton that had been completely flayed of flesh and would try and bite you and everything. So
wasn't that lovely?
They were friends, but also kind of one and the same. But then the most famous iteration that we have is actually Rawhead Rex, which was...
Tell me it's a dinosaur.
It is not a dinosaur.
Dang it!
It's another kind of anthropomorphic creature. Rawhead Rex was actually written by Clive Barker, who's famous for the Hellraiser series.
Okay.
And the story, it was a novella in his Books of Blood. And Rawhead Rex was a Rawhead that has come back after being imprisoned for a certain amount of time to wreak havoc on a village.
Not Havage?
Havage. To wreak havoc.
Roosevelt.
To wreak havoc on a village and kill them. This is actually the first time that we actually see that a Rawhead has a weakness and can be defeated. Ooh. Normally, it's very boogeyman deer. Normally, it's very boogeyman-esque, can't be defeated. You know, it's more about avoiding the Rawhead so you don't die.
Yeah, I'm tired of this. Let's kill some things.
Yeah, exactly. So this Rawhead, though, in Clive Barker's novel, can be defeated by its one fear: a pregnant woman. And so
that's fair.
And so it's but in this case, it's the amulet of a pregnant woman that, when held in front of the Rawhead, weakens the Rawhead just enough that everyone's able to descend upon him and basically overpower the Rawhead. This is then turned into a film back in 1986 called Rawhead Rex, in which the rawhead gets a little bit more of a distinct form. It almost looks like a giant demonic ape, where like large tusks coming out of its mouth, but it very much looks like a monkey, with like blood and everything all over. This time it's defeated not simply by the pendant of a pregnant woman, but actually by a statue of a pregnant woman that, when held by a woman, it has to be held by a woman. If a man were to hold it, it becomes useless. But if a woman picks up the statue and holds it, then that's when the power is activated. And it seems to shoot out like these lightning bolts or magical bolts of energy that are able to trap it and then kills the rawhead. Unfortunately, in this case, it seems to almost just put it back into a coma as the rawhead at the very end of all good horror movies comes back.
Of course.
Which, I mean, there's a little bit of blending in how they decide to approach the rawhead in this episode when they have, like, you know, the basement's flooded. I don't know if that's an intentional thing, but the original types of rawheads always hung out by bogs, by ponds, by, you know, water of some sort. And that's where, you know, kids were supposed to avoid going.
Right.
In the episode, it's stolen 2 children. And again, the rawhead is supposed to be going after children.
Right.
And then Dean is able to kill it with electricity. And which is, I would like to believe, almost a nod to Clive Barker's tale.
With the lightning coming out of the statue?
The lightning coming out of the statue, or the magical energy, or however you want to look at it, as the thing that takes down the rawhead. And so I could see a little bit of there, but also it's just a good vehicle for Dean electrocuting himself and ended up having a heart attack, which I feel like all the bacon cheeseburgers would have almost been a little bit more realistic for how much he's consuming, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, so the rawhead is a real thing. It's a little bit of a boogeyman.
Now, I want to say, like, I happened upon this a long time ago. Just like the story of it. And the version that I saw made it almost kind of like a tulpa, to where it was like, if you think about it, like, it becomes real. And the more you think about it, like, it's almost like a Freddy Krueger or like the Bye Bye Man, where, like, if you think about him, then he's going to come get you. Like, did any of that come up?
I did not come across that when I was looking through some of the literature. But I mean, with a lot of boogeymen, a lot of their powers are very dependent on what you think about them and how you feel about them and what exactly it is, and especially by how much the rawhead has kind of evolved and changed. I mean, there's you even look at the Dresden Files, which is an urban fantasy novel series written by Jim Butcher. The rawhead is included in the novel Cold Days, but the rawhead in this case is actually made up of a lot of disposed body parts of things like horses and humans and animals, like, just like, which have all been like pushed together into some kind of animated creature. And so that's another kind of a nightmare fuel creature that has been created simply by wanting to turn the boogeyman into something else. So with I feel like with a lot of boogeymen, you can kind of make it happen. I didn't see anything like that specifically with it, but that's just looking at some of the more traditional myths and the traditional folk tales that we see of the rawhead.
That makes sense. On another note, because I was slightly disappointed with Rawhead Rex, have you ever heard or seen the trailer for Velocipaster?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have, and it is awesome.
All I've seen is the trailer, but I mean it.
I need to actually watch the full thing, but yeah, the trailer itself is awesome.
That might be on Shudder.
Oh, I'm down for that. So that is Rawhead, or in this case, Rawhead Rex. Matthew, what episode are we looking at next time?
Ooh, next time we're going to be looking at racist ghost trucks.
Ooh, this should be interesting.
So it's Route 666 is our next episode.
Well, stay tuned for that, because then we're going to be looking at some of the haunted highways that exist in the U.S.
Excellent. Well, until then, stay safe, buckle up, and
we got work to do.